Is that one recording?
Yeah,
Okay.
I hit the button.
All right. Well, welcome to the Oystercast, everyone. My name is Ron Cowie.
And I'm Alex Boudelier.
And today we are doing all things technical. We have 2 cameras. We're doing things outdoors. We have a fire going. We just got a brand new Sony A7SIII. And we're going to see what happens when the lights start getting lower. We're shooting an S-Log2.
Yep, on both cameras.
Before we go any further, what is S-Log2? Because I know it's something, and I know it's kind of cool, but I don't know anything about it.
So basically, it is a way for the camera to capture light and color and light and dark and interpret it in such a way that gives you more range in post to mess with your colors and bring up the shadows, bring down the highlights, and all of that. And basically, it takes all of the information. If you had a graph from 1 to 100, it takes all that information and it scrunches it down maybe between 40 and 60.
Mm-hmm.
And what that does is when you look at it on the camera, it looks really flat. It looks super desaturated.
Yeah.
And you actually have to overexpose by about a stop or two in order to get a proper exposure in post. And our monitors can't interpret it correctly, so you have to apply a LUT after the fact.
What is a LUT?
It is a lookup table, which basically it is, rather than just take your contrast slider in your lumetri panel or whatever you're using and just bumping it up over to the right, it's actually looking at the numerical value of the data in the image, and it is applying math to that to make it something else.
So, I mean, I use LUTs in the sense that, like, it's a look. It gives me the look of film or whatever. And that's as far as I go with it. I am a very lazy, and you've heard it here first, probably not, a very lazy videographer. I just make it look good.
Yeah. And if we didn't set picture profiles on these cameras, it would still look pretty good out of the box. What you see is what you get.
Yeah.
And we've been doing that for years, and it's been fine.
Yeah.
What log will give us, and this is just an experiment, will give us a little bit more latitude. So, we were on a shoot just a few months ago in this boutique Italian shop. Huge big windows in a very dark environment. So you had, and then you had the lights on the deli cases and all these other things going on. So there wasn't a whole lot of room to be able to pull up those shadows without affecting the highlights and vice versa. Log will give us a little bit more room so that you can retain a lot of that data. So it's kind of you don't have to shoot anything that's like HDR because it has that baked in. It just requires extra work after the fact.
So we've just bought the
A7SIII.
A7S3. I'm using it. I don't deserve to use it. It's too much camera for me, but I'm doing something camera-ish every week, and so you're getting another one too. Why is this camera different than what we've used? Why we talked a while back about gear and how it's not that important, but why we are upgrading our gear, and what's the deciding factor behind all that?
Well, there's a few to kind of paint a little bit of a picture as to our gear journey over the past handful of years. When we first started working together, we were shooting on the Canon 6Ds with very basic L-series zoom lenses, which at the time it was a perfect camera because it shot good stills, it shot decent enough video. We didn't know what we were doing, so we didn't want anything crazy, and it was affordable. But I was really looking forward to what Canon was going to come out with next, and we could just upgrade to that, where that was going to be the 5D Mark IV, the 6D Mark II, and when those came out, it was very disappointing because the video out of both of those cameras kind of sucked.
Okay.
Compared to, it would have been a pretty small upgrade for a huge price point.
Yeah.
But around the same time, the A7S II came out, and for about I don't know, $2,000, $2,500 or whatever it was.
Mm-hmm.
We got amazing low light. We got video autofocus. We got 60 frames per second instead of the 1080p 30 that was coming out of the 60. We actually got 4K.
Mm-hmm.
We got 120 frames per second in HD,
Mm-hmm.
which we've never used, but
Mm-hmm.
we have it. And we get in-body image stabilization.
Mm-hmm.
So those are all things that the Canon couldn't do.
Yep.
And those things allowed us to shoot in lower light situations, which we do more often than not.
Mm-hmm.
The video autofocus is great for B-roll sequences. And in-body image stabilization is great. I use a lot of vintage lenses,
Mm-hmm.
so it comes in handy there. And overall, it's just a lot of practical upgrades.
Mm-hmm.
We ran with that for a long time. And now, with the A7S III, we get better low light.
Mm-hmm.
The A7S II is already amazing when it came out, but the A7S III is even better because it has dual native ISOs between ISO 100 and 12,800.
Mm-hmm.
So it even gets better the higher you go to some oversimplified extent. It shoots S-Log3, which is another version of S-Log that we can use, and it shoots 10-bit color in ProRes internally. And that all that means is that we don't need to use the Atomos,
Mm-hmm.
which the A7S II can't even do 10-bit with the Atomos anyway.
Mm-hmm.
But we get ProRes internally, and we get better color without having to use any extra equipment,
Mm-hmm.
which means we can shoot better and faster.
Yep.
So our whole thing is fast and light.
Mm-hmm.
And this camera is kind of the embodiment of that. It even right now, it has no recording limit,
Mm-hmm.
and that one does. And
Yep.
it has a big appendage on it.
Yep.
So it's kind of a no-brainer in
Mm-hmm.
that regard. One of the big upgrades that should not be forgotten about is the battery life on the A7 II, A7S II is hot garbage.
Oh, yeah.
And it stresses me out on every shoot.
Yes. No, me too. I always plug in my camera whenever I don't, which I think is stupid, but here we are.
Yeah. And the solution to that has always been, get the big V-mount batteries or the big gold mount batteries. But, we're going to spend, $2,000 on batteries?
It's stupid.
When we can spend that money on a camera that just works?
Yep.
So eventually we'll have to get those batteries anyway because you
Yeah.
use them for the mixer. We'll get them for the lights.
Mm-hmm.
But why buy them now
Yeah.
when we can get a camera that does it better?
Yeah.
So to have a camera that actually can match the battery life of any other modern DSLR on the market is going to be a refreshing breath of fresh air.
Absolutely. And I think our gear journey, we have upgraded to match what we do and have been very smart about it. I mean, like, for instance, the microphones. Last year, I mean, it's been almost a year since everything shut down pandemic-wise. And that was the time where I really said, okay, we're going to be doing a lot of stuff online. We're going to be... we are going to have to think about what we're doing and the little things here and there. And that's why, I upgraded to the Shure SM7Bs, which are... now I'm seeing them everywhere.
Yeah.
Because they're, it's something like a $400 microphone, and it's unbelievable. Like the quality and the tone that you get for vocals. And I actually I was videoing a music, or not video, I was making an audio recording of a quartet or a quintet with a trumpet and timpani or whatever, and I put this in front of the trumpet player. It's clear as a bell. It's awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I see a lot of musicians use these
Yeah.
on TikTok and Instagram and everything.
Very, very clear sound. And so we're upgrading, and there is, well, you can make $100 microphone sound really good, and you can make a cheaper camera work. I mean, that's very true. But you're only as good as your tools in some ways. And if I know that kind of contradicts what we said earlier. It's like, if you don't, I know that the A7S3, I say it right?
Mm-hmm.
The A7S3 is more camera than I know what to do with right now. But it's the same thing with the Sound Devices Mix Pre 10 2 that I got. It's like when I got it, I think it was last year, or maybe a little, I knew it was more mixer than I knew what to do with. But I've grown into it, and as my experience, because I know I'm doing this every day.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that's the thing. If we were only doing this on the weekends, if this was a hobby, I'd say that's stupid. Or I'd say, well, if you have the money, knock yourself out.
Right.
It's a free country. But we're doing something every day. And having the equipment that can... And every day we're learning. I mean, that's just what happens when you do it. We learn by doing, and we get better and better. And it really stinks to have something in your head and have equipment that doesn't allow you to do that.
Right. And this, I mean, there's something to be said about matching your competitors to some extent and kind of sticking with the modern tools. And that's not to say the A7S II or the A7 II or whatever is not modern. We're not shooting on handy cams.
No.
But hey, Jack. There's also no reason to spend, C300 money.
No.
It's the C300 Mark III is an amazing camera.
What is that? Who makes that?
Canon. And it shoots 10-bit internally. It shoots 12-bit RAW externally. It's got autofocus. It's got ND filters. It's got all of the bells and whistles that you could possibly need.
Mm-hmm.
It is commonly lined up next to the Arri Alexa cameras.
Mm-hmm.
And it, would be the best camera, one of the best cameras we could buy.
Yeah.
But A, are any of our clients going to notice?
No.
And B, are we going after any jobs that camera would specifically get us?
No.
And C, why would we spend the money if we don't have to? This camera is still revolutionary in many ways.
Mm-hmm.
And, the Ursa Mini G2 has been on my wish list for a while, but it can't come close to matching the low light performance of this camera.
Yeah, as we've kind of developed our business, one of the things that I see is that we are really good, and where we're really happy is in the field, on location, not overly producing something. I would love to do a bank ad. That would be good money. That would be a good client to have. But I don't think people, we'd get a job for, on a sound stage. That's just not who we are. That's not how we see things. You're, when in doubt, or when left to your own devices, you go out hiking and you need equipment that kind of allows you to work outdoors without fail and be comfortable. Wasn't there something where they took these cameras out on Everest?
Oh, yeah. So we'll link to it below, but Sony releases, they've got a bunch of little short films, mini documentaries that they do, mostly to feature this gear. Yeah. And Renan Ozturk shot this whole thing with this camera on Everest. It was this whole National Geographic piece. And they've done that with the A1. They did that with the A7S II. Every new camera they come out, they put together these films. And sometimes they're always not always, but they're typically in extreme conditions. Yeah. Everest, they've done underwater stuff. That was one of the things that excited me about switching from Canon as well, is you get all these features in a much smaller form factor.
Yeah, the camera is small. When the box showed up today, it was a small box. It was like, that's a lot of money in a small box. Yeah. And it's okay. Everything that I ordered was in the box. But it is remarkable how compact these cameras are and lightweight. And I'm a big fan of, when I first started, give me the big camera bag with all the crap. There's a picture of me on Christmas morning when I was maybe 24 or whatever, and I got my first camera or my second I don't know what. And I just had everything. I had the biggest camera bag you could get and strapped onto everything, and you name it, it was all there. And lightweight.
Yep.
Make it light. Make it light.
Well, and I've looked into, is going with something like the Ursa broadcast with the ENG lens on it. Like, is that worth doing? Because you have everything you need in it. You've got a single lens that has an absurd range, something like 8 to 120 millimeters with a doubler on it. So and that's also on a sensor this big. So it's really like a 24 to 400 or something like that. It has everything you need in it, but light is the last thing that it is.
Yeah.
They're heavy, they're bulky, they are usually, 18 to 20 inches long total with the battery and everything.
Yeah, that's nuts. I mean, it's not nuts if that's like your workflow.
Right. Well, and those cameras, they're built for you to work quickly in the field. It has XLR, like full-size XLR, it has ND filters, it has SDI out. They're designed to be heavy and shoulder mounted.
Yeah.
So that they're stable. And they have the servo thing on the side, so, doing like rack focuses are not super smooth.
What's a rack focus?
If you had an object close to you and an object far away from you and you wanted to focus between them, that would be a rack focus. So so you see that in movies when they're focusing on, like, I don't know, a chair or something, and then it changes.
The door opens.
And then it changes focus to something farther in the background. That would be a rack focus.
Okay.
So that's you have to do that by hand on some of those big cameras, which if you're smooth is fine, but on something like this, it's a little easier with a follow focus or just do it touchscreen. So pros and cons.
Yep.
But for the work that we do, fast and light, I think this is kind of the best option that we could get. Even the Blackmagic Pocket 6K Pro we looked at.
Yes, we did.
Battery life wasn't as good, and we'd have to switch lens systems and give up the ability to do stills.
Yeah. No, I like. My dad has a lot of sayings, and one of them is it's good to have options.
Right.
And having options is a good thing to do, and I think for people who are, making independent films or doing what we do, short spots, all this, and this is a great system. This is more system, like you'll grow into this. I'm a big fan of growing into things. Now, another test that we're doing is we're sitting here while the sun's going down, and we're seeing how the low light looks. The color is changing, the exposure is changing. I don't think we've changed it too much.
Nope.
And so it will be interesting to see the sun has now gone down. The light really hasn't changed too much. It's we maybe lost a stop. Maybe.
I think this camera is set to be about a stop higher than that one anyway.
Yeah. I know when I was doing, I did some videos last year for St. Peter's doing the Compline service, and Compline is an evening prayer service that's done in the evening. And so an idea, what I would do is we'd say, and you see some of these on our YouTube channel they become ecumenical on our YouTube channel, but I always went about 20 minutes before sunset, and I just let the camera go and let the exposure go down and down and down after the sun went down, and just to kind of see what it would do. And it's interesting to see how, the video, I mean, it just starts to get really muddy because it's making stuff up. So I'll be very interested to see. I don't think we're going to be here until it gets really dark. By the way, I am so grateful that we are in, it is now, what is it, 6:45, and
it's daylight.
And it is still daylight. Like, I am, you've heard it here, I hate 4:30 sunsets. Like, no, it's a non-starter for me in a lot of ways. I mean, I'll do them, but no.
Yeah.
So, but I have done some still photography here in this backyard on full moon nights, and I've photographed these trees back here, and I'll send you a clip or some stills of it, of like out of the camera, and then just open the exposure, and it is insane. It looks like daylight.
Mm-hmm.
Like the color space is fairly accurate, and it's not really noisy. I don't understand it. Like when I see stuff like that, I'm blown away.
Have you seen Philip Bloom's video on the A7S III? Either of these cameras, actually. No. We'll link that as well. He is I'm going to mess it up, but a British, I believe, filmmaker who, he used to work for news back when he was younger, mm-hmm. and now he just makes films and short films, and he does a lot of gear reviews. So mm-hmm. when a new camera comes out, he's kind of become known for making really long reviews, mm-hmm. like hours long. And when he got the A7S II, he went out to the beach and just set it up and was recording at 11 o'clock at night, mm-hmm. and kept pushing the ISO and pushing it and pushing it and pushing it. And when I first saw the footage, I thought it was during the day.
Wow.
Like the light was all off. Like it mm-hmm. was, there was no directional light. It was mm-hmm. just flat and weird. But the sand was sand colored.
Jeez.
And when he did the A7S III, and you put them side by side, you can really see the difference. Mm-hmm. The S3, because it has that second, technically it's unofficial, but that second native ISO of 12,800, it gets much cleaner at that point. Like if you shot at the ISO, I don't remember the number, but like right before that, it's going to be noisy. As soon as you hit 12,800, it gets clean again.
Huh.
And then it reset, kind of goes back up from there. So this the A7S II did not have that.
No.
And it was still better than any other camera out there, but that's why the A7S III is that much better, because it basically starts fresh after that point.
I'm thinking how much you take for granted. Like I'm showing my age, but and not in a bad way, but just thinking about this technology and what we're able to do with these smaller, lighter cameras. That, impossible to do. I remember learning how to shoot slide film, and you shoot it at night, and the fastest slide film was 400 ASA, Provia, and Ektachrome and all that stuff, and that was. And so you got amazing saturation and color and zero grain, but you couldn't. That's why you had to really learn how to light. I was listening to Roger Deakins' podcast, which is an excellent podcast. I think you'd get a kick out of it. And they were talking to another cinematographer or a gaffer. A gaffer is a lighting person. On movie sets, like even when it looks like night, on the screen, it's like lit up plain as day, and back in the day, with Technicolor and stuff, they had the lights and the fans and everything that they had. I mean, it was, I think there's stories of like when they were doing Wizard of Oz, of Judy Garland like almost passing out on several occasions because it was so hot mm-hmm. on set because of the lights. Yep. And the fans that the cameras were working so fast, and they were loud. I mean, it was what we're doing these days now, silently, is remarkable.
Yeah, I mean, we see that even with, you're right. I never got to learn on the old stuff.
Uphill both ways.
Yeah, but even working in news, the big news cameras that we have are bulky and they're heavy, mm-hmm. and they're not up to date by any standard. Mm-hmm. Anything they don't even have. It's not measured in ISO. It's just low, medium, high gain. Mm-hmm. And once you bump it up, it's just noisy garbage. It's just a pain to use. Where with this, especially with the unlimited recording time, you could blow any of those ENG cameras out of the water. And even with our lights, I've used plenty of old RE tungsten lights, and granted, those things still work just as good as they did 30 years ago.
Yeah.
But they're hot. If a bulb explodes, it's not pretty.
No.
They're super durable, but you gotta wait for them to cool down.
Yep.
You shouldn't really move them when they're on. They're not dimmable. They're not bicolor, so they're just this super warm tungsten light. And now we have these LEDs that are silent. They're cool.
Yep.
You can pop them right back in the bag, and they cost, $300. And in 3 years, we'll replace them with something even better.
They have LED systems that you can build a whole room. Like, that's unbelievable, where you can actually make it feel like a jet's going over it, lighting that is so, I mean, it's unbelievable so creatively, the equipment that we have today, and this even goes down into the phones. Like, this is not, so if you're listening to this or watching this and you're like, well, I don't have any of that and I'm not interested, you can do this with your phone.
Oh yeah.
Like the stuff.
I've worked with people who, they didn't feel like grabbing the big camera, so they just shot everything on their phone. Yeah.
And I'm realizing more and more that it's not that no one, like clients or whatever, they don't really, I watch a movie and I'm not interested in the equipment. I mean, as audience, I'm not interested in the equipment. As someone, who's interested, well, how do they like that? That's part of my experience. I'm always curious about that stuff. But it's really important for me not to let that interfere with my experience of whatever I'm looking at.
Right.
And I really don't like it. Well, I really try to make work that allows people to be just audience. So they're not bumping into either my shortcomings as a producer or overly dazzled. The technique and the equipment should become invisible, and you should just, and that's what I really am looking forward to. This is just another kind of gear that we can have. Gear. Get it? A gear, like in a wheel. It's just another thing that we can do that allows us to it's another thing that we can do that allows us to be invisible.
Right.
Yeah.
And I have one argument against the whole phone thing, because I hear that all the time.
Yeah.
It's like, well, my phone shoots 4K. It's like, yes. But it kind of goes back to that argument of, what sacrifices are you making?
Yeah.
Right? So with your phone, without extra gear, because I know that they've shot, people have shot films on their phones and whatever. Without a whole extra rig and stuff, you have no way of recording audio.
Yep.
You have, there's no form factor that makes it easy to use. Because typically the stabilization in the phones get, not super reliable. Sure, it's really good for everyday stuff.
Yeah.
But if it goes wonky, there's nothing you can do to change it. So you probably want to turn stabilization off. And anytime you adjust your settings, you're touching the phone, which is going to add shake to it. So, all of those problems are solved when you kind of get into this realm. And then you can go too far, right? With the Alexa, it's the same way. It's like, okay, you have a limited ISO, so you need to bring more lights. So it's finding that balance that gives you all the features that you need or want to help you work faster and create better work.
Yeah.
Sure, we could shoot everything we do on iPhones with, the interchangeable moment lenses, with, all the extra dongles that you need to get for microphones and all this other crap. But at the end of the day, it's going to slow us down.
Yep.
We're going to spend more time fooling with it to make it get us what we want. And at the end of the day, it's probably not going to be this by the end of it.
No.
So, finding the tool for the job that'll help you create better and more work
Yeah.
is more important.
Yeah. No, and I think that what's exciting about this day and age is there's such a huge variety. There's so many